I've just watched the Snyder Cut of the Justice League, so let's talk about it. Before getting straight into the movie, I just wanted to go over kind of the history of the movie because I feel like there's just a lot of bullshit online that is forgetting what happened and just kind of creating their own narrative to pretend that they're right all the time. Obviously, we all know that in 2017, Snyder had to be taken off of the movie for family things, but part of that was also the fact that he had done a cut of the movie called an assembly cut, not a finished movie. Anybody who said, and there were many who were telling me directly, that there was a fully finished movie waiting to just be sent to a theater, um, to of Zack Snyder's Justice League back in 2017 is just wrong. That wasn't the case. Um, there was an assembly cut. There were test screenings. We know that there was a version of this movie completed that was sent out to theaters for test screenings held by Warner Brothers. The Warner Brothers executives didn't like what they saw. They didn't like the feedback they got from the people who attended the test screenings. So they decided that they needed to go back to work and rework the movie. Unfortunately, in that time, Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide, and no one should be continuing to work when you're dealing with something like that. Whether he would have powered through it or not, I think the right move was to not be working on a movie during that time and to be taking care of your family and yourself in that scenario. So, messy or not, which I don't think that anybody just talking about it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever is going to have any idea what the conversation between Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder was around the removal of him from the Justice League movie. As I said, if you thought that there just was no movie completed in any way whatsoever and a Snyder Cut didn't exist, then you were wrong. If you thought that there was a completed version of the movie of Zack Snyder's cut of the Justice League just sitting there waiting to be sent out to a theater ready for public eyes on a big ass screen, you were also wrong. I've seen lately that there's just been this complete change in the narrative now, where now everyone who was screaming about a Snyder Cut existing and ready to be seen, and the type of people who were yelling at me and calling me names because I was just trying to be reasonable about the fact that, like, listen, that movie's over and done with. They're not the theatrical cut failed. They're not going to spend another however many millions of dollars to finish that one. They're now acting like, they've said all along that, like, no, there was a director's cut unfinished and that's what they were talking about. They didn't start talking about an unfinished cut of the movie until Zack Snyder himself admitted that the movie was not finished and would need more work before it would be ready to be sent out. So, just to get that part of the conversation out of the way first, because it's really been frustrating to watch the stupidity of the internet make these dumbass arguments that are absolutely unnecessary to be having. They couldn't just be excited that this movie was coming out. They had to argue that they were right about something they said 4 years ago, which, come on, like, what are you doing? So the theatrical cut of Justice League came out in 2017. The reason for that is they said, we have to go back to work on it. We don't have Zack Snyder to do it. We're going to get the guy who made the Avengers movie, because we want Avengers money, and bring him in to do the Justice League movie and to finish it and to rework it and to whatever. The problem is they gave him, I believe this happened in May, so June, July, August, September, October, and then the release date was November or something. So he basically had 5 months to what they were hoping would be to fix that movie and improve it, to release it and have it be a successful movie. Now, whether you like that movie or not, it is irrelevant. The fact is, it didn't do well. The We found out a little bit after that movie, and we saw how badly it did at the box office. That Warner Brothers executives wanted to make sure they got the bonus that they were going to get by releasing that movie in 2017, because AT&T was in the process of buying out Warner Brothers, and if that deal went into effect and closed, then those executives may not have gotten any money for that movie being released whenever it did. So they rushed out a movie. They didn't really care that it wasn't going to be good, because they would get the money for having released that movie that year. And that put everybody in a bad spot. That put Whedon in a bad spot, where he had limited time to do limited things to try to save the movie. Anyway, so that's where we were with Justice League. And then you had all of the bullshit that happened online, where people were whining and complaining and yelling about it for 3 or 4 years, about wanting this Snyder Cut of the Justice League to be released. And I only say whining and complaining because that's kind of exactly what it was. They got a movie they didn't like, and they wanted the thing that they thought they would love. That's what happened. A lot of them then turned it into, and some of them actually followed through and did good things by turning it into a way to support suicide victims and people in those situations in honor of Zack Snyder and his daughter. Some people started to realize that they were actually fighting for, a director to have his vision in the movie that he wanted to do be done in the way that he wanted it to be done. And so there were a few people who had justifiable reasons to behind their claims and their hashtagging for releasing the Snyder Cut. Last year, I believe it was early last year in 2020, I think, or was it 2019? I don't know. At some point, Warner Brothers announced that they were going to bring back Zack Snyder to complete his cut of the Justice League, which included $70 million to finish the movie, finish the CG and the work on what already existed that needed to be done, and some additional photography to do some scenes and some recording that he hadn't done yet. So what you got with this Snyder Cut is his original ideas, but put through the prism of the experiences that and the conversations online that happened over the last 3-4 years or whatever it's been. Without that 3 or 4 years of time, who knows what the original version of the Snyder Cut would have actually looked like. Certainly wouldn't look like it did today. And the only reason that we do have it is because HBO got into the streaming wars, the streaming services launching by everyone and everywhere. Without HBO Max, the Snyder Cut does not happen at all. The $70 million is not worth going back and trying to fix that movie. The only reason that it happened, or at least the only reason that it happened now, and in the form that it did, is because of HBO Max. That is it. They just needed something big that was in the zeitgeist that would hopefully boost them in subscriptions. They've had a rocky launch, so it was important that they have something big to put on their service and to claim as this big exclusive thing that they're going to be able to do. And that's why it happened. It didn't happen because Warner Brothers saw the complaints and decided that they needed to give in to the people who wanted their movie the way that they wanted it. It didn't happen because Warner Brothers had a change of heart and wanted to give a director who got unfortunately removed from a project and was unable to finish it, and they just decided, well, let's give that director back his toys and let him do his thing. That's not what happened. It happened because there was a monetary reason or a monetary drive to have something big and major to bring to their service, and this was it. This was the thing that they had, that there was a lot of interest online that they would hope would actually translate to subscriptions and money in their pocket. That's it. That is the only reason we have it. Otherwise, it may have come years down the line when someone decided that they needed something to throw out for some kind of anniversary of DC stuff at Warner Brothers or whatever. They may have eventually, like the Donner cut of Superman, um, I think Superman 2, they may have eventually decided, hey, Zach, come and take your stuff and recut it and do different things with it, and let's release your Snyder cut. But it wouldn't have been a 4 hour movie where nothing was cut. It would have been a maybe 2.5, 3 hour version that he was able to add a little bit more into it and finish some of the CG stuff, and that's what we would have gotten, and it wouldn't have been what this is now. So again, the only reason we get the Snyder Cut today, as I watched it this morning, is HBO Max. Not because of online pressure. That was literally just them seeing that and being like, hey, maybe that it'll be financially worth it. This $70 million could be a good gamble. Anyway, let's talk about the movie. I didn't. So when I first saw the 2017 Justice League, I enjoyed it. I thought I liked it. Then I watched it again, and I couldn't even finish it. I fell asleep. It was boring. the stuff that I liked about it, I didn't like as much on a second viewing. The things that I didn't like about it, I really didn't like even more about it on a second viewing and further. So that movie was just ultimately a dud in pretty much every which way you could possibly imagine. This one, it's... I hate that everybody's only talking about it in comparison to the original Justice League and the and Batman vs Superman, because I don't think it's necessarily 100% fair to talk about it in only those terms and not as it stands as a whole movie. So I'm going to try to do both. There's a lot of things in Batman vs Superman that I thought was actually really cool and really liked, and has some of the best. Has a few of the best moments or things we've seen in a comic book movie in that movie. But it also has some of the dumbest and some of the worst things we have ever seen in a comic book movie in that movie. That movie was literally trying to tell 5 different stories in one, and they each of them deserve their own movie to explore, and they didn't come together. It didn't work. You were trying to do the death of Superman. Why you would throw that in your movie where you're also introducing a new Batman, a very different new Batman that you can't just throw out there and be like, well, everybody knows Batman, because not everybody knew this Batman. They just didn't. This was a very different, more violent, an older Batman that we haven't seen before in movies. So you had those movies. You had the death of Superman. You had the introduction of a new Batman. You had the introduction of Wonder Woman. You had the Lois and Lex Luthor storyline, and Luthor going after both Superman and Batman. I don't even know what Luthor was doing in that movie, but that was a part of the movie that just didn't work at all. Jesse Eisenberg is Lex Luthor. He was playing the Riddler, playing Lex Luthor, and I just didn't get it. Anyway, so that movie's really low on my list of DC movies. It's just not very good. Snyder knows how to make things look cool, though, so it has some of that. So anyway, so that's where I stand going into this one. I was not excited about this movie. I did not. If I didn't have HBO Max, I wouldn't watch the movie. There was nothing. I wasn't going to get HBO Max to watch this. It's only because I have access to HBO Max that I decided to go ahead and watch it anyway, just out of the curiosity for what a movie could look like from a different perspective than the one we've already seen. And I'm a film geek or nerd or whatever you want to call it, so like that's interesting to me to see the two versions of the same movie. I constantly think about what would it have been like to see Edgar Wright's Ant-Man? What would it have been like to see Guillermo del Toro's The Hobbit trilogy rather than what we got? So I was interested to see what it was that Snyder was actually planning on doing. And so I watched it, and you really feel the 4 hours in this movie. It's broken up into parts like it was meant to be released as episodes, and I think at one point that's what they announced that they were going to do. I'm not sure why they backed out of it. But it's so long. It takes so the biggest problem with the movie is that the villains, Darkseid, Desaad, and Steppenwolf, are all their plan is 100% generic and uninteresting and nothing. It's the same plot as from the theatrical version. Get the three mother boxes, which are some world-ending machines, I guess, instead of just boom tube things, which is what they actually are in DC lore. I don't know why they had to be this other thing. But get these three mother boxes, bring them together so you can. It's terraform Earth. That's what they were gonna fucking do. And again, another let's terraform the planet thing for whatever reason. Who the fuck knows? And so their story was just boring and uninteresting, and dumb, and didn't work. And they all look like World of Warcraft cinematic trailer characters. They didn't look like they physically existed in space. They didn't look good at all. When you've seen what you can do with a CG character like a Thanos in Infinity War and in Endgame, and then you show up and you put out something like this with these characters, it makes it's so bad. The way that they look, there's just nothing there, nothing to sink your teeth into. In terms of that, so when you remove the villains from the story because there's nothing there for you, the movie becomes about only the forming of the Justice League, and it takes 2 hours, and I'm not joking. It's 2 hours into the movie before you get even 4 Justice League members in the same scene. And at that point, they haven't even mentioned Superman. We know from the theatrical cut that they bring back Superman 2 hours into the movie when you finally get 4 of them together. Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, and Cyborg. They haven't even started to talk about potential of bringing Superman back. It's been talked about for a long time that Cyborg is the heart of the movie, is the character, the emotional center of the movie, and the character that the movie pivots around. He doesn't show up until almost 2 hours into the movie. It's like, what? How am I supposed to care or be into his story if it takes so long for us to even get to him? Anyway, so that's a problem with the pacing. There's just too much time spent in certain scenes, in certain action scenes that didn't need to last as long as they did. Too much time spent in slow motion. If you just did less slow motion, you'd cut like probably a half hour out of this right away. He didn't cut anything out. I swear there's nothing left on the cutting room floor with this movie. This isn't a director's cut. This is just the full on, this is what we filmed cut of the movie. And then he put the scenes in the order that they're supposed to happen without making any further cuts. It's ridiculous how much time is spent doing certain things. And if you really love Snyder's DC universe and you want to live in it for that much, then like you're going to like it. If you just want to see a solid movie, that's not what this is. That's not, this is literally just putting everything on the table and saying, here, watch it how you want and experience how you want it. And hopefully there's something in there that you'll like, I guess. So it's way, way too long. There's a really solid 3-hour movie in this 4 hours of footage that would have probably flown by much quicker and flowed much better and worked overall as a story if the right cuts were made. But, that just wasn't the thing. So, if you don't like Snyder's DC universe and his idea of these characters, then you're not going to like the movies. If you already were on board for it, then this is exactly what you wanted. I will say, at the end of everything, my biggest pet peeve with Snyder's work is, I liked Man of Steel. I because I thought that, because classic Superman, Boy Scout Superman, always doing the right thing Superman, is not interesting to me inherently. I get kind of bored with that type of character and that Superman particularly. So Man of Steel showing a Superman who didn't know how to be Superman, I thought was really interesting. If the point was to show him becoming the Superman and that classical Superman we all know. Batman vs Superman dropped the ball on that. They didn't further that. So at that point it's okay, well that's not where you're going then. That wasn't the plan. So I didn't really connect with it there, so I didn't know what, there was going to be in Snyder's version of this movie to connect with on Superman on that level. And, it's just kind of more of the same stuff. They have that scene where they fight each other and near the monument of his that, was destroyed. But it's just a lot of cool for the sake of being cool, and a lot of it wasn't even cool. Snyder is style over substance, and I don't, and that can work to a certain degree. It creates cool moments and cool action scenes and cool slow-mo scenes, but when there's nothing there on an intellectual level or on an emotional level to connect with, it just leaves you feeling ultimately empty. The problem is, these characters for most of their history have always been presented as humans in spite of being gods. Snyder seems to just see them as gods. And you can't relate to a god. You can't understand what they're going through. You can't get on the same level as them. You don't even see them attempting to be on the same level as people. There's very little dialogue, if any, between any of the heroes in Batman vs Superman or this movie, and civilians. If you think back to BVS with the montage of Superman saving people, every single one of those scenes is not about him saving people or his care for humanity or, wanting to be on their level with them. It's, look at this god. He's pulling that big ass ship over ice. And the point of that scene isn't look at him connecting and saving people because he wanted to do the right thing. The point of that scene is look at what he's capable of doing. The scene where he saves a bunch of people, I think in Mexico, and then you see that they're just swarming him and reaching their arms out to him like he's a god. He just kind of slowly, with a grimace, looks up and away from them. He doesn't even look them in the eye. He doesn't connect with them on any level. No version of Superman I've ever known would just accept that as like a response and be okay with that. Like Superman would be like, yo, like I'm just trying to do the right thing, trying to help you guys. Like not, I'm not bigger than you. I'm not better than you, whatever. So all of those scenes, they're just, these characters are not presented as humans. And that goes the same for all of them in the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. They're not humans at all. They're like, it's even hard to see what their motivation for even wanting to stop Darkseid is, besides, well, then they're probably going to be killed and they don't want to be. There's just no connection to humanity between these characters and, well, humanity. So it's just hard to buy into. It's on an intellectual and emotional level. It's, if you like things to look cool and usually in slow motion, and you like that dark color palette, then you're gonna like this movie. If you want something to emotionally connect with, then this isn't gonna be it. He missed the mark. It's not what he does. It's not what he specializes in. Um, so and which this brings me, when I'm saying the words like an intellectual, on an intellectual or emotional level, brings me back to this argument that I keep seeing, even from Zack Snyder himself, about the idea that these DC movies, at least the ones that he's done, are adult or mature or whatever you want to call it. And I constantly get that same kind of shitty replies from these Snyder bro people who will, when I'm critical of a Zack Snyder DC movie, will yell at me to go back and enjoy my little kitty Marvel movies. I think they're confusing color desaturation and broodiness and sad people with maturity, because that's not what that is. That doesn't make your movie is not adult if you present it in a serious tone. That's not how that works. A serious movie isn't look at these gods. It's when you think about comic book movies that are serious and that are adult. Well, Tony Stark's witnessing, the military industrial complex firsthand and his role in it, and then making the decision that he wants to end that program as part of his business, because he's been able to witness firsthand the trauma and the horrible devastation that it causes. That's adult. When you spend an hour in Avengers Endgame with characters who have lost the fight. They've lost the fight. They've lost half of the people in the planet, but also obviously the universe. And you spend an hour with those people just sitting in despair without hope, until, Tony miraculously figures out time travel. That is adult. When you're looking at actual human emotions and problems and you're presenting them in a realistic way, just because they crack jokes and characters are witty and quippy doesn't mean that it's for kids. Like, that's just not how that works. And I don't understand this idea that these Snyderverse movies are for adults. There's nothing adult about not wanting to kill this alien you think is an imminent threat because you find out that their mother has the same name as yours. Like, what is that? Like, that's not adult. That's like some of the most childish reconciliation of a problem, or I don't even know what that is. Like, that's not adult. So I think it's better to just leave those kind of arguments to the side and not worry about it and just judge the fucking movies for the movies that they are. That's probably the best way to go about movie criticism, in my opinion. So I don't rate movies on like a number scale. I probably have a lot more to say about the movie that's just kind of out of my mind because I didn't take notes and don't have anything up to look at. But, it's, like I said, you really feel the length. The characters are not fun. I never had a feeling of enjoyment that I was watching this movie. It was intriguing. It was interesting. That being said, with the fact that like it wasn't enjoyable, and as critical as I've been of Snyder and everything, I'm a little bit of a different case because I'm willing to spend my time on things that I don't love. Like, I don't have to love something to want to see more of it or be interested in seeing it. I do not want the hashtag restore the Snyderverse. I do not want that at all. If Warner Brothers decided that with HBO Max or whatever, that they wanted to continue to work with Zack Snyder and let him do his part 2 to this movie, because this movie very much is a part 1 to a 2-part Justice League movie. Even though it's long enough to be 2 movies. It's just a part 1. The entire movie is just set up for another movie. That being said, a lot of the stuff that they're setting up, I want to see come through to the end. Like, I want to see where he was going to go with it. Just out of the curiosity of what this world looks like. The characters, again, as critical as I've been, the characters by the end of this movie are a lot closer to something that I can that I like than they were at the beginning and in previous movies. So I would be interested, if they wanted to continue with Snyderverse stuff, to see those continue, to see the part 2 of this Justice League movie, and to see they have the Deathstroke scene, the Deathstroke meeting Lex Luthor scene at the end of this movie, and I want to see, based on how that scene goes and how it's set up, I want to see that Batman versus Deathstroke movie that was talked about and was never actually continued. I would like to see it. It sounds interesting. Deathstroke knows who Batman is, and so does Lex Luthor. So them going after Bruce is interesting to me. I would like to see that in that world of Bruce, that especially that version of him, who's willing to go further than we're used to. When they're setting up stuff for future movies, apparently this is something that was well known to a lot of people, but they have fucking Martian Manhunter in this movie. John Jones shows up. He's the military dude that was in both Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, and he shows up and reveals himself to be Martian Manhunter. And yeah, give me that. I was kind of disappointed he didn't show up at the end of the movie to help in the fight. But the setting that stuff up, the idea of they had the scene still of the Age of Heroes scene where Zeus and Ares were fighting alongside a Green Lantern and the Amazons against Steppenwolf thousands of years ago, or whatever the case was. And then the Lantern gets killed and the ring flies away. If there was an idea for where that ring was going and who it was going to be, I would like to see that come to fruition in part 2 of this Justice League. I want to see Martian Manhunter become part of the team. I want to see all of it. I don't want to see that instead of the rest of the stuff. Matt Reeves' Batman, I want to see so bad. Revisiting his Planet of the Apes movies recently made me more excited about watching the Batman than the trailer for that movie did, or the teaser that came out actually did. So I want to see that. I want to see, as ridiculous and dumb and all over the place as Aquaman was, I want to see more of that ridiculousness. I didn't like Wonder Woman 1984 very much at all. But I would like to see what Patty Jenkins does with Wonder Woman without having to be constrained to what Zack Snyder's view of these characters are. Just let them do their own things. And I think you'd be better off for it. I'd be happy with that, but I don't want to see Snyder and his vision take over everything again and be the driving force behind every single DC project at Warner Brothers. That would be really boring, and I don't think that would work. But if you want to give them that cast and those characters and say, okay, here, tell your part 2, then, there was enough interest, or if there even was, who knows, going to be a while before we know if this was a financial successful project for Warner Brothers. But I would be interested to know where things are going to go in Snyder's universe, just not at the expense of everything else, which is also interesting to explore, I think. I forgot, so this is going to pop up at some place in the video that I don't know where. The music, the score in these movies is really important to me, and score in movies in general is really important to me. This really missed having someone like Hans Zimmer doing the score for it. I believe this one was just done by Junkie XL, who worked with Zimmer on Batman vs Superman. The only musical cues or musical themes that worked for me in this entire movie were things that existed before this movie. It was when the Wonder Woman theme kicked in, when the Man of Steel music kicked in, When you had those musical cues that existed from other movies, is when the music in this movie worked. Without those moments to kind of remember, then the entirety of the soundtrack just kind of like misses me. It's not memorable. It's not very good. Even just the song, Snyder likes to use songs to introduce characters, and he's got this like weird guitar riff that plays a few times throughout the movie. Doesn't work. He will put music to introduce characters. He'll use these like soft rock songs or whatever. I don't know, these kind of melancholy ballads or whatever to kind of set the scene and everything, and to show these characters doing whatever it is they're doing. For instance, the Flash, the entire introductionary scene of the Flash in this movie just does not work for me at all on any level. And it's one of those that's music accompaniment while he's doing his Flash things to save Iris from a car crash, and it doesn't work at all. Like it seems cheesy. It's over the top. There's the scene of Arthur that we see from the trailers for Aquaman. He leaves a bar drinking a bottle of whiskey. There's water crashing all up on him. There's this soft song playing and everything as he gets off to go into the ocean and swim away. And I understand, like, hey, if you want to watch Jason Momoa down a bottle of whiskey while he's being crashed into wearing a tank top by ocean waves and everything, if that's your thing, that's your thing, and cool for you, Zach, but and anybody else who enjoyed that scene. But I don't understand why it was there, and the music accompaniment to that was also just like, what are we doing here? I don't understand it. So I didn't like any of that, and I didn't like the score for the movie. Like I said, the only stuff that worked was the music that existed before this movie. So anyway, as I stopped recording, I remembered that I wanted to make that point, so I had to record a quick thing, and I don't know, go back to the rest of the video then, I guess. I don't rate movies on a number scale because they're largely ineffective and pointless to do that, because my 8 out of 10 is different from what it takes to be an 8 out of 10 on your scale. So like, how does that help you? All I can say is, if you really like Snyder's stuff, you're going to love this movie. If you don't, then don't watch this movie. It's not going to be good for you. I think it's average. If I had to rank it in my list of DC movies, or at least everyone wants to do their DCEU movie rankings and everything, it would be above Wonder Woman 1984, above Suicide Squad, above Batman vs. Superman, and above the theatrical cut of Justice League, but below everything else that they've released in recent years. So, that's where I stand on it, and saw the movie, want to start doing more of movie discussions and stuff. I have an MCU movie ranking video that I'm working on, where I ranked all 23 movies in the MCU that have come out so far, and I plan on putting that out soon. But it's just going to take quite a bit of editing, because my eyes for what I want it to be are a little bit above my skill level of editing at the moment. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do certain things, because I don't know, I just really want to experiment with the editing process and see what I can make of that video, and see how it works. But anyway, I'm happy to have conversations with anybody in the comments about how they felt about this movie, and the Snyderverse and everything. I mean, ultimately, like I said, I'm never going to love Snyder's idea of these characters, because they're just fundamentally not how I see the DC universe. And his movies focus on style rather than substance, and I want more substance in my movies. in a general sense, even when it comes to superhero movies. So these kind of movies are never going to rank that very high on any of my in my mind. So yeah, that was it. I needed to take a nap after watching that movie, though. It was very long, very very long. Um, so without anything else to say, because I don't think I have anything else to say, I'll see you guys later. God, that Joker scene. Why the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?